Section 3 of Weird Tales Double Feature, The Shadows and the Projection of Armand Dubois, by Henry S. Whitehead. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. The Shadows, Part 3. Not another word about old Morris could I extract out of Mr. Bonesteel. But of course he had me aroused. I tried Despard, who lives on the other end of the island, a man educated at the Sorbonne, and who knows, it is said, everything there is to know about the island and its affairs. It was much the same with Mr. Despard, who is an entirely different kind of person, younger, for one thing, than my old friend the government surveyor. Mr. Despard smiled, a kind of wry smile. "Old Morris," said he, reflectively, and paused. "Might I venture to ask, no offense, my dear sir, why you wish to rake up such an old matter as old Morris's death?" I was a bit nonplussed, I confess. Mr. Despard had been perfectly courteous, as he always is, but somehow I had not expected such an intervention on his part. "Why," said I should find it hard to tell you precisely, Mr. Despard. It is not that I am averse to being frank in the face of such an inquiry as yours, sir. I was not aware that there was anything important, serious, as your tone implies, about that matter. Put it down to mere curiosity, if you will, and answer or not as you wish, sir." I was perhaps a little nettled at this unexpected and, as it then seemed to me, finicky obstruction being placed in my way. What could there be in such a case for this formal reticence, these verbal safeguards? If it were a Jumbie story, there was no importance to it. If otherwise, well, I might be regarded by Despard as a person of reasonable discretion. Perhaps Despard was some relative of old Morris, and there was something a bit off-color about his death. That, too, might account for Mr. Bonesteel's reticence. "By the way," I inquired, noting Despard's reticence, "might I ask another question, Mr. Despard?" "Certainly, Mr. Stewart." "I do not wish to impress you as idly or unduly curious, but are you and Mr. Bonesteel related in any way?" "No, sir, we are not related in any way at all, sir." "Thank you, Mr. Despard," said I, and bowing to each other after the fashion set here by the Danes, we departed. I had not learned a thing about old Morris's death. I went in to see Mrs. Heidenclong. Here, if anywhere, I should find out what was intriguing me. Mrs. Heidenclong is an ancient Creole lady, relict of a prosperous storekeeper, who lives, surrounded by a certain state of her own, propped up in bed in an environment of a stupendous quantity of lacy things and gauzy ruffles. I did not intend to mention old Morris to her, but only to get some information about the zombie, if that should be possible. I found the old lady, surrounded by her ruffles and lace things, in one of her good days. Her health has been precarious for 20 years. It was not difficult to get her talking about the zombie.
"Yes,"
said Mrs. Heidenclong.
"It is extraordinary how the old beliefs and the old words cling in their minds. Why, Mr. Stewart, I was hearing about a trial in the police court a few days ago. One old black woman had summoned another for abusive language. On the witness stand the complaining old woman said, 'She called me a worthless old Carthagene, sir.' Now think of that. Carthage was destroyed way back in the days of Cato the Elder, you know, Mr. Stewart. The greatest town of all Africa. To be a Carthaginian meant to be a sea robber. A pirate, that is, a thief. One old woman on this island more than 2,000 years afterward wishes to call another a thief, and the word Carthagene is the word she naturally uses. I suppose that has persisted on in the West Coast and throughout all those village dialects in Africa, without a break, all these centuries. The zombie of the French islands? Yes, Mr. Stewart, there are some extraordinary beliefs. Why, perhaps you've heard mention made of old Morris, Mr. Stewart. He used to live in your house, you know."
I held my breath. Here was a possible trove. I nodded my head. I did not dare to speak.
"Well, old Morris, you see, lived most of his earlier days in Martinique, and it is said he had a somewhat adventurous life there, Mr. Stewart. Just what he did or how he got himself involved seems never to have been made clear, but in some way, Mr. Stewart, the black people believe Morris got himself involved with a very powerful Jumbie, and that is where what I said about the persistence of ancient beliefs comes in. Look on that table there, among those photographs, Mr. Stewart. There, that's the place. I wish I were able to get up and assist you. These maids, everything askew, I have no doubt. Do you observe a kind of fish-headed thing about as big as the palm of your hand? Yes, that is it.
I found the fish-headed thing and carried it over to Mrs. Heidenkling. She took it in her hand and looked at it. It lacked a nose, but otherwise it was intact. A strange, uncouth-looking little godling, made of anciently polished volcanic stone, with huge, protruding eyes, small human-like ears, and what must have been a nose like a tortola jackfish, or a black witch-bird with its parrot-beak.
Now that, continued Mrs. Heidenkling, is one of the very ancient household gods of the aborigines of Martinique, and you will observe the likeness in the idea to the lars and the penates of your school Latin days. Whether this is a lar or a penate, I cannot tell.
And the old lady paused to smile at her little joke.
But at any rate, he is a representation of something very powerful, a fish god of the Caribs. There's something Egyptian about the idea, too. I've always suspected, and Mr. Stewart a Carib or an Arawak Indian. They were both in these islands, you know. Looked much like an ancient Egyptian, perhaps half like your Zuni or Aztec Indians, and half Egyptian would be a fair statement of his appearance. These fish gods had men's bodies, you see, precisely like the hawk-headed and jackal-headed deities of ancient Egypt. It was one of those, the black people say, with which Mr. Morris got himself mixed up. God knows, as they say, how. And Mr. Stewart, they say his death was terrible. The particulars I've never heard, but my father knew, and he was sick for several days after seeing Mr. Morris's body. Extraordinary, isn't it? And when are you coming this way again, Mr. Stewart? Do drop in and call on an old lady.
I felt that I was progressing. The next time I saw Mr. Bonesteel, which was that very evening, I stopped him on the street and asked for a word with him. What was the date, or the approximate date, Mr. Bonesteel, of Mr. Morris's death? Could you recall that, sir? Mr. Bonesteel paused and considered. It was just before Christmas, said he. I remember it not so much by Christmas as by the races, which always take place the day after Christmas. Morris had entered his sorrel mare, Santerce, and as he left no heirs, there was no one who owned Santerce, and she had to be withdrawn from the races. It affected the betting very materially, and a good many persons were annoyed about it, but there wasn't anything that could be done. I thanked Mr. Bonesteel, and not without reason, for his answer had fitted into something that had been growing in my mind. Christmas was only 8 days off. This drama of the furniture and old Morris getting into bed, I had thought, and not unnaturally it seemed to me, might be a kind of reenactment of the tragedy of his death. If I had the courage to watch night after night, I might be relieved of the necessity of asking any questions. I might witness whatever had occurred in some weird reproduction, engineered God knows how. For 3 nights now I had seen the phenomenon of old Morris getting into bed repeated, and each time it was clearer. I had sketched him into my drawing, a short, squat figure, rather stooped and fat, but possessed of a strange gorilla-like energy. His movements as he walked toward the bed, seized the edge of the mosquito netting, and climbed in were, somehow, full of power, which was the more apparent since these were ordinary motions. One could not help imagining that old Morris would have been a tough customer to tackle for all his alleged age. End of Section 3. The Shadows, Part 3.